Welcome to Let's Grow. I'm Linda Kelly, your host, Executive Director of Kelly Mental Health Foundation. We're a local nonprofit based in Thunder Bay, and what we're doing on this show is we're talking about a lot of the common life issues that cause or contribute to mental health issues. Here with me today, I have Amanda Hampton. Now, Amanda, this is your second time on the show. Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to follow up because I think we just had so much more to say. You were on the previous show about pregnancy loss, mm-hmm. and you're so kind as to tell us all about the two losses that you went through. We were able to talk about the story and sort of the fallout of what you experienced. But one thing that you touched on very briefly, I'd really like to explore with you.
Okay.
Is what was the impact on your partner?
Okay. Actually, I wasn't aware of how much it really did affect him until years after our loss. He shared with me that he blamed himself for what had happened. Little things like the arguments we may have had. Was he putting too much stress on me? Was he not being supportive enough? And I didn't know at the time that he was even feeling those things. So it was devastating to find out afterwards how much it did affect him. When I had the pregnancy loss, I felt like I was the only one really affected by it because I was physically going through it. And he was just there to support me during that time, and I never even thought to ask how he was doing. So yeah, it was difficult to learn afterwards that he was blaming himself, thinking that his actions could have caused the pregnancy to end in miscarriage. So that was difficult for me to learn, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting just because, if you're in the midst of grief, mm-hmm. you're going to be overwhelmed, right? The more pain that we're in, the less we are able to think about what's going on outside of us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the sense from him of the blaming at all. I knew that he was upset because he too had experienced a loss. When he came to see me at the hospital after I had lost the baby, the first reaction that I saw from his face was a sense of hope that maybe everything was going to be okay. So having to tell him that we did in fact lose the baby, that was the hardest part of the whole thing for me, was to break his heart. Be the one to deliver that news was right. Very difficult.
So he actually came up to the hospital thinking that everything had been saved, everything was okay.
I think there was a sense of that. I never asked him that myself, but I did see on his face when he came in that glimmer of hope that maybe everything was okay. And when I told him that it wasn't, he was completely devastated. I've never seen him like that before. Yeah. So it was different. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just really, really unexpected then.
It was, yeah. And I didn't know that he felt like he could have caused it. And if I would have known that sooner, I would have communicated to him that it was nothing that he did. I couldn't imagine having to live with that feeling for so many years and kind of keeping that inside. So I don't know how he managed to do that, but he did. And we've since talked about it, and I've reassured him that it wasn't anything he did. I can't prove that, but...
Well, and that's the difficulty with pregnancy loss, miscarriage, is about 90% of the time we don't know why.
No, we don't. And we were both kind of, with this pregnancy, we knew early on. So I took all the precautions. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't smoking, I was eating better. So to have that loss after doing everything right was more difficult for us, because with our first child, we didn't know we were pregnant until after the 3-month mark. So I was drinking, I was smoking, I was in Vegas. So yeah, and to have that pregnancy and in a healthy baby boy, it was difficult for us to process doing everything right and still losing that pregnancy. So that was different for both of us to go through.
Wow. I was reading a story about a woman that recently had a miscarriage, and she's sitting on a couch with her husband afterwards, and he was talking to her about just, how hard it is and how they lost their baby. And she turned to him and said, you are never going to feel what I felt. You didn't have to go through what I went through, so stop saying these things. Mm-hmm. And so it was interesting because, as a mental health provider, I'm reading this and going, oh my gosh, ouch for one thing,
Yeah.
because it's really minimizing what he went through, but also you can't minimize what she went through, because he's not going to experience the physical trauma of having to wake up to blood,
Yeah.
and having to go through a procedure or waiting months and months for your hormones to go back to normal. He won't have to experience that, but he still experienced the powerlessness
Yes.
that she did.
Absolutely. And I think for my partner, I think that's what he felt too, was that powerlessness. There was nothing that he could do. So I think that's why he blamed himself, because that was the only rationalization he could come to. Because there's no rational reason why it happened. But us as humans, we need to find a reason why something goes wrong when you've done everything right. So I think that might have had something to do with it. And I didn't even think that he would be hurting as badly as I was during that time. So I kind of get where that person's coming from, but I would never say to him, this is me going through this, because it's very much you and your partner. It's not just the women themselves that are experiencing the loss, it's the partner as well. Mm-hmm. And that's very difficult.
I think it's got to be a really difficult position to be in, to be the father, just because you really don't have that control. A lot of times they are really not aware of even the reproductive cycle, right? And there's very few people that actually know that there's only a few days a month that you can actually get pregnant.
Yeah.
Right. But most women will learn about this. They'll try to get on top of their own cycle, their own bodies, and they'll be very painfully aware of every single symptom.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not like you're taught in high school. It can happen just one time. There's a lot more into getting pregnant, in my experience anyways, than just that one time. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's ever happened that way for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. Why did you think it was unexpected for you? You mentioned it was unexpected that he would react so strongly.
I think for me, him not being the one that was pregnant, I didn't realize that he'd had that connection to the baby as a mother may have, because, you feel the baby, you have the symptoms. I had severe morning sickness with her. So yeah, it's just, I think that's why, because he didn't have any of the physiological feelings that I was having. So I didn't realize that he was already forming a connection with that baby at only 12 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. That's, because that's what sets apart the two experiences, right? Just having that physical connection, knowing that it's happening.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder sometimes, and maybe we should have had him on if he was actually willing to talk to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You never know.
Just to figure out, what he was thinking during this part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then curious as well, like if you picked up on the same kind of the sense of powerlessness with him during your first pregnancy.
No. I would say with the first pregnancy, because we just found out we were pregnant. I had just missed my period.
Right.
So it was very, very fresh. And we told his parents, and then 2 days later we lost that pregnancy.
Right.
So for us, it hadn't even set in that we were pregnant. We were young. It was unexpected, unplanned. So there was a lot of anxiety and nervousness around having that pregnancy to begin with. So I think in a sense we might have had a form of relief with that loss, because we weren't prepared at that time. Not to say that it wasn't painful, but it was probably for the best, I think, for us at the age that we were. We were able to finish college without being pregnant.
Sure. Okay, so we're just going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the lasting effects of pregnancy loss. Stay with us. Welcome back to Let's Grow. I'm Linda Kelly, your host, and today we are talking about miscarriage or pregnancy loss and the lasting effects. This is a follow-up to our previous show about 2 pregnancy losses, and today I have Amanda Hampton. So Amanda, we were just talking about your partner's sense of powerlessness, and I was really curious then about, so after this happens, after you lose a pregnancy, particularly one where you feel like you're in the safe zone,
Yep.
what is it like for you then trying to get back to normal?
Oh, it took a while for me to get back into my normal routine. I just needed to take time for myself I kind of isolated myself away from everybody, and just spent time with my partner and with our son. And that was healing for myself. We made the decision that we were going to try again. So that gave me a little sense of hope, and something to kind of look forward to. But it took years. It took quite a while to get pregnant. So that was very daunting on just how I felt about everything. I felt like I'm not going to be able to give my son a sibling. We're not going to be able to get pregnant again. My last pregnancy ended in pregnancy loss, and that was going to be my experience. So that was really hard to even continue to try. And for him as well, too, I think we kind of hit that point where it's like, it's now or never. If we don't get pregnant within this year, we're not going to try anymore. So even those thoughts were really hard for both of us to deal with, and that put the pressure on. And I think that's why we were having such a hard time getting pregnant, because felt that pressure to have that other pregnancy, and it was difficult for us to come by it. But eventually we did, which was great. Now we have our daughter, which is amazing. But yeah, it was really hard to make that commitment. And then once I did become pregnant, even that whole pregnancy, I was scared. I was scared that something was going to go wrong, second guessing everything. When my morning sickness went away, I was worried that there was something wrong, because that's what happened with my last loss. My symptoms went away and I lost the baby within a week. So on days I was feeling good, I was scared that there was something wrong with the pregnancy. So it was really difficult to go through that for 9 months.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you never really had a chance to relax, enjoy.
No, I didn't enjoy that pregnancy so much. I was very happy to be pregnant, but it was a very anxious time for me. The whole 9 months, I was scared something was going to go wrong and that we were going to have to go through another loss.
Yeah.
So that was very difficult.
I often see people doing sort of goal posting, like, 3 months, this is when I lost it, so if I'm past this, then maybe I'm okay, but you just never lose that anxiety.
No, I didn't, because with the last loss, we hit that mark, right? We're like, yes, and we just finished telling everybody, and you never really know. I have many friends that have experienced losses after the 5-month mark even, or have lost their baby shortly after birth. So you don't know what's going to happen. And after experiencing those losses myself, it was difficult for me to just be calm and know that the pregnancy was going to go okay. That I never had that thought. I was always wondering.
Well, and I appreciate you also bringing up that sentiment that, okay, if it doesn't happen this year, then we're just going to stop trying.
Yeah.
Because that happens a lot too. There's plenty of people that just have these sort of arbitrary deadlines.
Yes.
And I think it's a way of creating control in a situation that you have no control over.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. Yeah. We ideally wanted our kids to be close in age. So that was one of the biggest things for us was our son is getting older and we're running out of time. I was getting older. I always said that if I was done having kids at 32, I wasn't going to, and I got pregnant at 31. So we just made that mark, and we weren't trying. We were actually not trying to get pregnant when we got pregnant with her. So it's just funny how life seems to work that way. I think we were meant to have this baby. So I'm really, really grateful for her.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard for so many people, just with the anxiety, again, that loss of control, the powerlessness over something that is supposed to be biological. It's like you said, in high school they say it just takes once, but then we're not really taught about this.
No.
Right? We're not taught about the fact that there's a limited window, and that 1 in 4 pregnancies is lost, and that's tested, known pregnancies.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would have tried to have kids if I would have known all of those statistics in the beginning. my first 2 pregnancies were both surprises. I was on birth control. We were not trying to get pregnant. And I ended up getting pregnant both times. So it was very different. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And then it was very difficult to conceive again. And fortunately, we were able to. I know a lot of people that aren't able to. So that would be difficult to deal with, especially after a loss.
Well, absolutely. And then you've also got the pressure of you're approaching 35. Now we call you geriatric pregnancy. You know, that's such a lovely thing that we have to live with.
It is. And there's more difficulties the older that you get. So even my care versus my son and my daughter, because I was a lot older, there was a lot more testing that they did, a lot of other things. So even that added anxiety, things like Down syndrome, that kind of stuff is all heightened the older you get. So that just kind of added into it. And then you got pressure from family or grandparents that aren't trying to pressure you, but you always get the, oh, am I going to get another grandbaby?
Yes. Yeah. The first baby's literally in the delivery room and they're already having, when you're going to have another one.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was asked that within 24 hours of having my son. Are you going to try again? And I said, yes, of course I will. But yeah, I think that too adds into a lot of people. Of course, they're getting pregnant for themselves, but you're growing more than just your family. It's grandchildren for your parents, or nieces and nephews for your siblings if you have them. So it's a little bit more than just having another baby. It affects more than just yourself.
So, I mean, without having the grandparents sitting here, what's your perception of the impact on them?
My mom was actually with me for my last pregnancy loss. And I think it was very sad for her to see me going through that. She has also experienced her own miscarriages, so she knew very well what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and what I was going through. And that was probably very hard for her to watch me have to go through. You never wish ill on your children. And she knew what that experience felt like. So yeah, I think it was very difficult for her, but I think she took comfort in being there with me, because when something went wrong, the first person I called was my mom. And I shared that experience with her, even though it was horrible. It brought us closer together. It really did.
Yeah, that's really important as well, just to have someone with you that you can get comfort from.
Yes.
And that's what can be really difficult sometimes, because there's going to be people in your circle who, you can't lean on because they're expressing so much sorrow themselves.
Yeah, and sometimes too much attention to the fact is not comforting at all either. So for my mom, she was just there in the moment with me. I don't even think she really spoke many words the whole time that we were there. She was just physically there with me, beside my bed, and that's all that I needed her to do. And she did exactly what I needed.
It's really, really fortunate, and not a lot of people have that.
No.
It's and like you said about your partner wanting to kind of be there to comfort you, but he also needed support himself. And so when we talk about the circles of grief, it's here's you right in the center, and then here's him, and all that grief has to be directed outwards. It can't be him directing his grief to you.
No, it affected all of us, even his parents. They were expecting another baby too, so our family is very involved in our lives. So they very much went through that loss with us. It wasn't just us.
Yeah. So we're just going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the lasting effects. Stay with us. Welcome back to Let's Grow. I'm Linda Kelly, your host, and I'm here with Amanda Hampton discussing the lasting effects of pregnancy loss. So we've been talking about the effect on the partner, the effect on you, the effect on the family. One thing I wanted to ask you about was the next time that you were at a family gathering after this happened, were people awkward? Did they act different?
I think people were trying to walk on eggshells a little bit, to be sensitive to my feelings. But I had taken quite a chunk of time to be by myself and with my partner. So it didn't happen shortly after. I think they picked up on, though, for me, the best thing to do was just to move forward. This has happened, and not to let it change us. And I acted that way, and I think my family followed suit. So, and they were very involved during the loss the whole time, so it wasn't shocking to them, it wasn't news to them. I was open with them about it, so I think that was easier for them to just be open with me as well too.
Sometimes it's really more helpful for them to just not talk about it, right? To not bring it up with you. I think people can feel pressured to sort of, well, we have to acknowledge this.
Yes.
But at the same time, you've been in it for all this time. So sometimes it is better for family. I mean, just as here's some advice for family. Don't bring it up unless the person wants to talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah. And fortunately, my family didn't really bring it up. If I do, they would openly talk to me about it. But I was usually the one to engage in those conversations, and that came months after the loss. It took me a while to be okay to talk about it, because we had to grieve for a while first.
Yeah, we have someone in our family that we love her to death. She's kind of a little old school, we would say, but she would be very against talking about it. She would be very much like, these are women's issues, you don't talk about it openly in public, like it's something to be sort of ashamed of.
Okay.
Even though she comes from a time where this stuff used to happen all the time. Like, we didn't have the diagnostics when she was, having children. We didn't have the ability to tell if something was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultrasounds only came around in the 70s, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how difficult it is to talk about miscarriage, pregnancy, loss, and I think it comes from that time period.
Yeah, when it wasn't talked about, or it wasn't okay to talk about it. And I hope that changes, because talking about it has helped me so much, even recently, and that's years after the loss. So I hope that it becomes a topic that people aren't scared to talk about. I hope that shame doesn't happen anymore, because it's not a shameful thing. And that I don't want people to feel ashamed of it. It happens, and it sucks, but everything happens for a reason, and I would just hate for someone to feel shame out of such a tragic experience.
Right. And I think the shame is there. I think it's still valid. I think it still happens because we don't talk about it.
Yes.
Because when, for example, I went through a miscarriage as well, and when you don't know that the 5 people around you also had this happen to them, you just go, oh my God, it's my fault. It's because of what I eat. It's because I don't exercise enough. It's because I'm too old. Something's wrong with my husband. We try so desperately to find a reason to convince ourselves we can prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
And usually that's blaming ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely difficult, and the reality of it is there's nothing we can do to prevent it, really. We can try to have the best healthy pregnancies. I did that, and I still lost that pregnancy. So it's really out of our hands what's going to happen and how that pregnancy is going to end up. And I'm really lucky that I have 2 kids.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, ever since my loss, of course, I do what a lot of women do, and I became obsessed with, trying to conceive, understanding all the language, the OPKs, the HPTs, there's a complete language when it comes to trying to conceive after that. People that know when their fertility window is, they're taking their temperature every single day, they're going in for testing to see how many eggs they have left. And it's wild. It can become all-encompassing. And for some, that is a coping mechanism. It creates that control.
Yeah.
For others, it's just like every month going, maybe this just isn't meant to be.
Yeah, and that would be hard to deal with. When it took me a while to conceive again, I had thoughts like that. Like, maybe I'm not going to have another kid. I didn't go to the extent of fertility testing or anything like that. Because for myself personally, it was too much. It was, let's try till this age, and if it happens, great. If it doesn't, then we still have 1 child. So we were lucky we're lucky that way.
Well, it is interesting though how it changes the deadlines for you as you go along.
Yes.
Because for example, I was one of those ones that's like, I want to be married by the time I'm 24. I want to be done having kids by the time I'm 30. And that did not happen.
No, it didn't.
But I'm okay with that. You know, it's like as I get older, it's like, okay, it didn't happen this year, or maybe something changed and I was doing something that was a little more exciting, more important, and all of a sudden, okay, it's not so bad if I pass that deadline. It doesn't mean the same thing for me that it once did.
Yeah, and your life is ever changing, so to be able to adapt to, you know, the new stages that were thrown at you or milestones that you didn't hit when you wanted to, it's really important to be able to do that. And I think when I ended up conceiving, it's because I was like, okay, you know what? No, I got a new job. I'm just going to focus on this. Let's put that on the back burner. And wouldn't you know,
Yeah.
as soon as I made that decision to put that on hold, we got pregnant.
Right.
So it was a surprise, but a blessing.
Right. And so that can also be, see, now hearing about that can be really upsetting for people that are trying to conceive, because people that are trying to and not being successful, they get that all the time. Oh, you just need to stop stressing.
Yeah.
But that's not true. I mean,
No.
it's not, stress it plays a role, but not the factor.
No, and for me, that's just how it happened for me.
Yeah.
It could be total coincidence.
Maybe it's the stress that helped you.
It might have been. Yeah, it could have been.
Yeah.
You know, I was hitting a different point in my life, but I was a lot happier too. Starting the new job for me was a good thing. It got me out of what I was doing before, and I didn't realize how unhappy I was doing what I was doing before until I wasn't doing it anymore. So stress aside, I was just generally happier too. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it doesn't. But we were really lucky that we got that second baby and that it was a healthy one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she's been wonderful.
Yes, she has.
Yeah. It's, again, going through a pregnancy loss, I think it can be very isolating. It can be something that people feel ashamed of. It can be something that lives with you for the rest of your life. But the more that I think we talk about it, the more open we are with it. I mean, I wrote about my experience. I shared it with everyone. You've shared yours with everyone. The more we do this, the easier it will be to get through it, to be able to just get back to this is now life as we know it, and what happens, happens, and just to be okay with that risk. It's always there.
You're not alone.
No. So thank you so much again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm sure you'll be back. We'll have other things to talk about.
Yeah.
Obviously, thank you again for sharing such a private story. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.